Trevor, welcome back to Social Situation. It is great to see you today. I'm so excited to have Emily Rasmussen join us. Emily and I did some work together when I was supporting her organization, Grapevine, back in 2020 during COVID. And she is just such an incredible person doing the most impactful work and really exemplifies what community is all about through her work, through how she shows up in the impact space. And I'm really just excited for you to meet her and for our audience to learn more about her. And just to share a little bit about Emily, like I said, she runs Grapevine. She is the founder and CEO of Grapevine, the only platform dedicated to giving circles and the broader collaborative giving movement. She brings more than 10 years of financing for impact, nonprofit, and social enterprise leadership experience to Grapevine. She was the founding executive director of NYU's Center for Ballet and the Arts. She launched the Lincoln Center at the Movies Global Media Initiative and developed innovative financing models for impact at enterprise solutions to poverty. She is a board member of the Harvard Business School Women's Association and the member of the LISC Emerging Leaders Council, amongst many other things that she's done. So thrilled to have her on. And again, it is great to see you, Trevor. I feel like it's been a little bit since we've chatted.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's great to be here. I'm really excited to chat with Emily today. You'll have to excuse me, I'm a little bit jet lagged. It's the afternoon and I'm drinking coffee. I just got back from our trip, which we can talk about a little bit later because I think it relates back to the community based theme of today's conversation with Emily and where we're at. So yeah, it's really good to be back. How have you been? How is life? What's been new with you, Erin?
Things are good. I can't believe we are in the spring. Where did 2024 go, let alone 2025? Time is flying, but busy is good. I can't complain. I wanted to ask you, Trevor, I don't know if you've done this in some of our early episodes, but I want to hear what you've been up to like for fun outside of work. I feel like we're going to get into the impact stuff, which is obviously why we're all here, but I always love learning more about you and your hobbies. And I know we talk a lot to our guests about self-care and like what do you do in your free time or the little free time that you have to keep you going and keep you focused and giving yourself those like much needed breaks so that you can best show up for the work that you're doing. So yeah, what have you been up to recently for fun?
That is a great question. Number one, I need to make more time for fun and not work because I admittedly, I'm always, thinking and working and, doing things and my brain always wants to be on a project or doing things just naturally. But I do have to remind myself to like take a break and slow down and to meditate and do yoga and like get exercise because I think that's like really fundamental to being able to relax and feel good and be present and just be, sort of in the best state possible. But it's I'm trying to think about like some of the other things I've been doing. I mean, I've been getting more into reading lately and like reading fiction, which I usually read a lot of nonfiction, but I think like I've been reading more fiction lately. I've been enjoying some TV shows. My partner and I just finished watching the season 2 of Severance on Apple TV, which I highly recommend and love if people are into thrillers. And Ted Lasso also we've been watching on the comedy side, which has been
Same
really
here.
good.
We're
And
gonna have to chat about that.
it's the inspiration I need. Like, I mean, honestly, Ted Lasso is like my when I'm like feeling things are impossible in the world or like I've lost hope in things, it gives me that like that feeling of coming back. So that's definitely one thing that I enjoy. And then I think just like going for walks, I've been, going for more walks in the park and even just like into like the city, downtown, just like, people watching and getting coffee. So yeah, I'm really trying to get back into the walking and the urban living as the weather changes and I'm spending more time outside. But what about you, Aaron? How are you relaxing these days? I know life, with a new relative newborn is still probably the biggest thing that's taking up
Yeah.
a lot for you. But how are you adjusting to that?
Yeah, thank you. Also love Ted Lasso. So we're gonna have to have some conversations about that later on. Such a great show. Yeah, so a couple things come to mind. I always played tennis growing up and into my adult life. Took a bit of a hiatus when I was pregnant, but recently started playing again. I do a weekly, just like adult class. It's very low key, it's fun. And it's interesting though, because my coach actually, when you start the class, she asks you what sector you work in. And then she tries to tailor her feedback on what you're doing on the court to how, like, the vernacular of your sector. I told her I work in social impact. I'm not exactly sure what she knows of social impact. So we'll see how that goes. But it's just been so much fun to get on the court and yeah, move my body, get some fresh air. We're playing outside here in Southern California and do something I love. So it's been great. In other news, record players are a big thing in my home right now. So I have a record player. My 11th month old is obsessed with it, which I'm glad about because I'm like, at least it's not a screen. So for about, without exaggeration, 5 to 7 hours a day our record player's on. She points at it and then points at us and points again for us to turn it on. So it's fun. We get to listen to some great music. She loves watching the record revolve, and it just reminds me to appreciate the little things in life. I think children instill that in us, especially as they're learning the world for the first time. I would never think twice about sitting and watching a record player, but for her, it is the most exciting thing. So I'm just basking in the joy that is the record player. So yeah, it's been a
I
lot of
love that.
fun.
I love that. I also have a record player. I love
Nice.
listening to records, and
Yeah.
I'm curious. First of all, Parker is 11 months old now.
Yes.
How did that happen?
I
I'm
know.
sorry,
I know. It's
11 months?
crazy.
What?
Yeah. It's crazy. We were planning our first birthday. Time flies. This is, yeah. This is why
Okay.
I'm like, where did last year go, let alone this year? So crazy.
Yes. Okay, and what does Parker like to listen to? Is there a record, a favorite record?
So it's funny. We recently got the record player just a bit before she was born. So we don't have a collection yet. So she's listening. We have two right now, one of which is Bob Marley, which is very important to my family. Was at my wedding. One of our first dance songs was Is This Love? And just many family members are connected to Bob Marley. So
I
we listen to a
love
lot of
Bob
that.
Marley. Amazing.
Um, so great, so powerful. And then the other record we have is Blind Pilot, which is another favorite band and music that was special, kind of related to my daughter. But we currently have a 1979 Raffi, if you know Raffi, the children's music from way back, record coming our way because we need some more music for her. She loves all music. We play her children's music on Spotify, but I want to get her something for her that's in record format. So I'm excited to bring some new ones into the collection.
Amazing, amazing. Raffi is great for kids and someone who's from my neck of the woods just
Yes, I know. I
close
know
to
he's
me.
Canadian. He's the best. Honestly, I love the music. Yeah,
Amazing.
there was a time where I think I liked it more than my child. I'm like, it's great. It's fine.
Oh,
So,
that's so much fun.
yeah. Yeah. So it's been great. But Trevor, I know there's so much more catching up we have to do. But I'm gonna leave it here for now because we have Emily joining us shortly. So we will take a quick break and we'll be right back. Looking to make an impact but not sure where to start? Elevate Social Impact, a purpose driven consulting and coaching practice, helps companies develop their CSR strategies and embed a culture of giving back into their brand. And they guide individuals looking for fulfilling careers in social impact. Whether you're wanting to grow your company's give back efforts or find values alignment and make a greater difference through your work, Elevate Social Impact is excited to equip you with the knowledge, resources, and tools that you need to get started. Check out elevatesocialimpact.com today to learn more. Welcome to Social Situation. We are so thrilled to have Emily Rasmussen with us today on the podcast. Emily is founder and CEO of Grapevine, the only platform dedicated to giving circles and the broader collaborative giving movement. I'm thrilled to be speaking with Emily today as we actually had the opportunity to do some work together when I was supporting her team back in 2020 during COVID. Such a crazy time, but we're thrilled to have her on and learn more about her work and her journey. I personally saw how innovative your organization is and how community minded you are. And we're just super excited to be able to feature you and the really impactful work that you are doing. So let's get into it. Emily, before we kind of jump into all sorts of questions, I'd love to first hear from you a little bit more about your journey and the impact origin story. Like, how did you come up with the idea of Grapevine? How did you get started in the impact space? Anything you can share with our audience?
Sure. And first, just thank you, Erin and Trevor, for having me on. It's always wonderful to have the opportunity to share a bit more about the work that we're doing at Grapevine. And and a special, I guess that I would say this is extra special because you did work with us at Grapevine, Erin. I think this is the first time I've ever done a podcast with someone who actually worked on Grapevine, and now we can talk about Grapevine and the full evolution of it over the last 5 or 6 years. So. But to wind back for a minute to how we got started. So my background has been more in the microfinance space is where I really got started in the social impact sector. And I spent some time, well, I interned at the UN and then through that got interested in microfinance and ended up moving to India for a couple of years to work there, helping to build a microfinance program. And that was a really powerful experience for me because we did a lot of work in the field helping to bring financing to communities. And really the concept was getting money into the hands of community members and let them decide, what to do with it, where to invest it locally. And so through that, I really developed a strong belief in community-based financing, lots of different models in that space that I was exposed to at that time, but that was really the core that I came away with. And right around that time, Kiva was taking off, Kickstarter was launching. So it was the very early days of this crowdfunding movement. And I was excited about that as just a way for us to unlock funding for communities around the world, from communities around the world. I didn't know what that really meant, but that was like the vision in my head that got me excited. And so I ended up joining a firm that was doing giving, or not giving circles, microfinance still at that time globally. So I got to experience this a little bit more broadly before then going to business school and exploring the tech side because I didn't have a tech background. I didn't have experience directly with crowdfunding. So when I was there, I interned with Kickstarter. I launched a crowdfunding platform, and I was just exploring how technology could interact with this hyper local, hyper community focused work that I'd been doing. And I was excited about the opportunity with crowdfunding to unlock funding, but I also felt like it was fairly transactional and it really wasn't getting to the community elements that I was drawn to, that I was excited about. And so I started to explore what that would look like to create a more purposeful giving experience that leverages technology, but still keeps community at the center, keeps a sense of ongoing impact and engagement, not just a one-time campaign, things like that. And so it took me a while to figure out exactly what that would look like, but I did go into the nonprofit space for several years after business school, where some of these ideas started to crystallize a bit more, and then ultimately left to start Grapevine. And I'll just say, kind of in summary, as this like pre-Grapevine era, one thing that I think is kind of funny to note and reflect on is that I really didn't know that giving circles were a thing at that point. I was really coming at this from all of those perspectives I just shared, and this idea that we were creating an alternative to crowdfunding, which I had started to call crowd granting, leveraging technology, not realizing that there were communities across the country and actually the world that were already coming together and pooling donations and collaborating to give back in this way. And no one had built a tool that was purpose built, for that use case, for them, for that collaborative model. And so we actually had a few giving circles discover us fairly early on as we were experimenting, and that was a very fortuitous moment. We were able to connect with them, and ultimately, we like to say Grapevine was built by and for giving circles because it was very much a collaborative effort from the earliest days.
That's
Well,
fantastic. I'm just curious, Emily, when you were doing this research and when you were kind of exploring different kind of angles you could take your organization and really understanding the need, where were you seeing giving circles at that time in terms of sector and also in terms of like geographically? I think it's something especially, I think about Trevor and I both worked, and you still do, Trevor, in the nonprofit space, have done a lot of fundraising work. And I think I even mentioned this to you, Emily, when we were working together. I didn't hear a ton about giving circles. And I think what you have built is like you've filled such an important gap. And I'm curious, when you were starting Grapevine or, kind of doing that pre-work, where were you seeing these pop up? And were they like very, in particular sectors, in particular regions of the world? Or is it just that the idea of giving circles hadn't yet exploded at that point?
It's such a good question because I mean, honestly, I don't know what the reason is. But what I found over the last several years working in this space is that there have been a lot of giving circles around, and actually giving circles started in the early 80s here in the US, and it was women who were starting them in their local communities. And the way that this movement was really growing was just through word of mouth. A woman hearing about her friend or her aunt or whoever it was in some other town running a giving circle, getting inspired and saying, oh, we should do that here. I could do that. And that's really where it started. I do like to note that certainly community-based finance and giving, there are models that go back centuries to cultures globally, right? And so this is just this modern version, this modern wave of that kind of giving. And but it's interesting that it was started by women, and what we see is often, uh, people who have created this model didn't necessarily feel like the existing philanthropic structures worked for them. And even now, when you look at the research around how men and women give, we see that women tend to and men tend to give differently. Women tend to give more collaboratively. They like to be more social. They tend to give to more causes and more organizations. And so it's not surprising that this model that has all of those things as core elements was created by them. And I think what's great to see, though, is that as it has continued to grow through word of mouth, but then really over the last 5 or 6 years, I would say there's been more investment and research into it, which has helped to raise awareness about it as more of a movement. I can't tell you how many Giving Circle leaders or members that I met that said, oh, I had no idea that there was a group like ours in the next town over, or like that there was a whole movement. I thought this was just this cool thing that we did in our community, right? Like people didn't have that sense of connection in many cases. But over the years, what we started to see is that there were these networks that developed to help support more people starting giving circles like this, right? Whether it was a particular structure, a particular way that we come together. One model is the 100 Who Care model, where 100 people come together. Everyone pitches in $100. So now they have a $10,000 check to give away. Members can then nominate nonprofits, and ultimately there's a vote. Whichever nonprofit gets the most votes gets that $10,000 check, and then they do it all again 3 months later. So in this model, they're giving away quarterly a $10,000 check. So, essentially you're donating the cost of one lunch a month. You're giving as a community, as a collective, $40,000 per year to 4 different nonprofits. So I think as this model started, as more people started to learn about it, and that word of mouth traveled, we then started to see the men's groups popping up, the teens groups popping up, and then just more people adopting it and adapting it in really wonderful and creative ways. There are Realtors Against Homelessness. There are groups, especially I would say during the COVID era and after, where people started to leverage technology much more frequently. The idea of being hyper local started to open up a bit. And while that's still the majority of these giving circles where they are hyper local and they are across the country, I know part of your question was around where are they? They are primarily in the US, primarily local, but we're seeing more and more cause-based groups popping up that have no geographic designation. And we're seeing more and more growth of this movement outside of the US. There are lots of giving circles now in Europe, in South America, in Canada, in China, in India. And so it's just been, it's a model I think that has really come from the grassroots and is resonating with a broad range of people. And because it's so flexible and community oriented, people I think can see themselves in it and can see how they can leverage it and make it their own and make it work for their community and their goals, which is all, I think, really powerful for making this truly a movement.
That's fantastic, Emily. I really appreciate that background and story. And first of all, welcome to the podcast. It's amazing to have you on here. And by the way, just for our listeners, can you tell us where you're based or calling in from today?
Sure, I'm in New York.
Oh, New York. Okay, well, I was just in New York on my way to a trip last week, and I love your beautiful city. So it's great to have you on here. You're reminding me of my days as an early entrepreneur when I remember 2010, 2011, the Kickstarter era, Indiegogo, all of the things that were kind of starting around that time, Kiva for sure. And I, with some friends, started a crowdfunding platform, and we were pivoting, trying to figure out how do we, similar to your goals, how do we get new revenues into communities efficiently, quickly, democratically, and really experimenting with different models that we were kind of going with. Crowdfunding was kind of where we landed, and then to your point around getting projects sustained over a long period of time, it was really challenging because you have these like calls to action and campaigns, and people give 10, 20, $5, whatever they can afford, collectively to make things happen. And then there's a question of, okay, well, how do we sustain this over a long period of time, and how do organizations sort of get out of needing to constantly campaign and ask and just like focus more on that work, right? And we never ended up getting to that point, but I think what I would just ask you about Grapevine is how are you responding to that? Because you address that as a community need. So how do you find giving circles respond to that sustained um, giving to these organizations?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Trevor, for that background. And it's fun to be speaking with someone who's has so much similarity, I guess, in the experience, right? Because I think we did, as I said, like begin with exploring, or personally, I began exploring crowdfunding and was excited about that model. Ran into similar challenges just in the model, I think that you mentioned, um, and I think where I went with it was that I remember talking to people who had run campaigns who I have one particular woman in mind right now who ran a campaign and it was successful and it was great. She was excited about it. But then there was this big question, well, what now? And at that point, we were still early, but even then she said, well, I feel like I can't go back and ask these people for money again. Like I just asked them. I can't ask them for another thing. And so how do I take this and now of course we know crowdfunding has developed in so many ways and people are in crowdfunding campaigns all the time and you get your donors to run crowdfunding campaigns and it's a very effective model. There are different ways to leverage it and strategies around it. But I think that really got me thinking, well, how do you eliminate that ask piece of it so much? Like, do you have to keep asking people? I mean, I come from the arts world. My background is in ballet, and so there's this idea of a patron, someone who continues to give in an ongoing way, the patronage of an artist. But of course, we have that concept in the nonprofit space as well, a recurring sustaining donor. And so I think at that point, crowdfunding was just still pretty early, and that concept wasn't there yet. And it certainly has become more so. But in my thinking, my take on this, uh, I think because of that community-based work I'd been doing and that belief in hyper-local community giving, it just felt natural that you would really want to focus the experience around a community experience. Right. And so that became the way to think about how do we engage people in a recurring manner. And it's about us coming together as a community and wanting to make a sustained impact and be connected to each other in a sustained way. Whether, by the way, we're giving to many different nonprofits throughout the year or one nonprofit, whether we're giving as a group of neighbors or group of colleagues or whatever it may be, that concept of community at the core, coming together around something we all care about and want to continue to support as a group is kind of the main concept.
I think what's really interesting about the giving circle model is that concept of community, right? So everybody who's in your giving circles, and I've had the pleasure of looking through your website and seeing so many different topics and cause areas and people around the globe that are supporting what they're passionate about. And I think what's great is that these people are bought in They are like-minded in that they support the same cause. And from the nonprofit standpoint, they don't need to spend all of the time knocking on the door of every single individual donor whenever there's a campaign or it's year end or there's something coming up, because these folks are bought in and they have a stake in the game, and they also have the community that comes along with it. It's so powerful to be able to, to increase, to elevate your giving by way of community, and to also connect with folks that you might not otherwise around this common goal. And when I think about, the work that you're doing, I feel like you are supporting communities that are supporting communities. That's just how I see it from my perspective, because you have all these little communities, all these, and some I'm sure are very large giving circles, and then they're supporting all these other like entities and nonprofits that are, I guess, supporting their communities, their beneficiaries, their constituents, their folks on the ground. So, I'm curious, when you were creating Grapevine, or even now, that it's been such an incredibly successful, sustained organization, and you've seen so much growth. I'm curious, like, what you think about when you think about supporting your communities, so your giving circles. How do you show up for the folks that are leading the giving circles? How do you show up for the folks that are a part of the giving circles? What does that look like from your standpoint?
Oh, such a good question, Erin. And it's so relevant and it's a question we constantly ask ourselves and are constantly trying to improve upon, right?
Mhm.
I was actually on a call earlier today, and I do several of these a week, where I was speaking with one of our Giving Circle members. I really try and talk to our Giving Circle members and leaders frequently. And I find ways to do that, whether it's in a group. I do weekly office hour calls, I do one-on-one calls. And finding a way to support a community. We have 85,000 members on the Grapevine platform now. So it becomes challenging to always support everyone in the ways that you would like. And when you have such a large group, and what you realize, or what I've realized, is that that it really takes, the community needs to support the community. And so I think our role has evolved and is continuing to evolve over time to be one that's focused increasingly on how do we create the pathways and the structure for community members who want to support other community members to do that, right? Because actually, you talking to another leader who just launched her group a month ago, while you're in the process of launching your group this month, even though you're in different cities, that's probably a better person for you to talk to right now than a customer support person that's on our team, right? Or than myself, who hasn't launched a giving circle in a few years, but is in several. So there are ways in which we are thinking about how can we be the direct support of our community, and then how can we unlock the power of our community to support each other. Um, beyond that, and that's just very top of mind for me right now, because I do see that as being the answer to how we can scale high quality support, but also really excitement around this movement, because it's not just technical support, right? People are getting involved because they're excited and they want to talk through ideas and they want to share. And so we think about ways that we can bring our Giving Circle leaders together in peer learning cohorts. And so we have a setup for that, where people can connect directly with each other, and we moderate that online as well. But then we do leader workshops and trainings around how to launch a Giving Circle, how to grow and engage your membership, how to navigate difficult conversations, things that we always go to the community first. What are the main questions you have? What are the topics or issues you're grappling with? And great, now that we know, let's have a session around that, because I'm sure there are a lot of other people who have those same questions. And by the way, can you join and can you share? So also getting our community members to step in, to be the speakers, to be the examples, is something that we're always focused on. So I think those are some of the main ways. There is a kind of there's a key role that we play, that is, of course, infrastructure, just the platform itself, right? And what we found is that leaders are saving incredible hours every week by using Grapevine because they don't have to chase down checks. They don't have to navigate 5 different platforms in order to communicate with members and then poll members and then nominate and vote on nonprofits and also collect donations and get tax receipts, right? All of it is in one place. So that's always been our kind of foundational layer, is that infrastructure to support the community. But then how can we build on top of that infrastructure ways for us to connect the community within groups and across groups to learn from each other? And I would say maybe the third one just being that there's a bigger movement. I mean, Grapevine, we have over 60%, I believe now, giving circles are active, have a profile on Grapevine. So that's over 60% of giving circles in the global directory, and that which we built in collaboration with Philanthropy together to try and showcase giving circles and help people to find groups that they want to join. But you'd be amazed at how many people join a giving circle or even start one and don't realize that there's a much bigger movement out there, that there are thousands of giving circles out there. And so trying to, beyond connecting our community, but helping ours connect to the broader movement and the bigger vision that this is diversifying and democratizing philanthropy, and that people that haven't really had access to a way to give impactfully, a way that resonates with them, an on-ramp into philanthropy, that this is providing, that is really motivating for people. And I honestly do think is a core part of our support, because that inspiration piece, that coming back to Trevor's question earlier about how do you keep people giving and keep people engaged, you have to make it easy and you have to make it inspiring and you have to make it fun. Like, I think those are the key things. And so we try and address all of those in these various ways.
Yeah, and you're doing an amazing job. I mean, you all are such a beautiful example of community and impact. And I love the grassroots nature, like the playing field is leveled and everybody has a stake in the game. And whether you're able to give $1 or 1,000 or 10,000, like you are an equal participant in this giving journey. And I love what you said earlier about the peer-to-peer support. It makes so much sense, right? If someone is talking to someone else that just recently started a giving circle, like who better than to chat with someone who's in that same position? I also just, so many things are coming up as you're talking, like what a great leadership opportunity. If someone is looking to get involved, through my work doing social impact career coaching, sometimes folks that I work with are not able to do that as their day job, but we talk about how can you make an impact in your life? It doesn't have to be through your 9 to 5. Giving circles are such an incredible way to do that, especially if you're the one leading the giving circle.
Right.
You're bringing people together who are like-minded to make an impact. Maybe it's at your workplace, maybe your company has some funds to allocate, or maybe it's an employee resource group, of folks that have a similar interest that can come together. I think there's just, of course, Emily, there's so many possibilities and opportunities. And I'm curious too, of course, it seems like this is such a win for nonprofits, but I'm curious as to kind of the feedback you've gotten over the years from nonprofits that are benefiting from the giving circles on your platform. What are they saying about the value of giving circles to the work that they're doing?
Yeah, I love that question. And maybe just before I jump to that one, I'll just kind of say one other thing that came up for me hearing you speak there is that we often talk about the 5, or what some people now call the 6 T's of philanthropy, being a really powerful element within the giving circle community. Now, it's not only within giving circles. I think this applies across broader philanthropy, but there's this idea of treasure, your donations being a core way that you can support and give back. But also the 5 other T's are your time, your talent, your testimony, your ties, and your trust. And so these are all ways that when you are thinking about supporting nonprofits, thinking about giving back, it's not always about the money. And I think when you are in, and it's not just me saying this, but the research shows that when you are in a giving circle and you're in this community-based model, these opportunities surface organically to volunteer, to amplify an organization's ask or their next event, to get involved in a deeper way. And that leads to much greater involvement by members, but also much greater support and targeted, meaningful support for those nonprofits. because you're really there in community with them as well as the other members of your giving circle, right? Um, so speaking about nonprofits, so from the beginning, my approach has been, let's leave the nonprofits alone. They have so much to do. The last thing I'm going to do is go ask them to fill out a profile on Grapevine to be considered for money. I want my introduction of Grapevine to a nonprofit to be a check. I want us to show them value and give them money and thank them for their work before ever asking them to do anything, if we ever have to ask them to do anything. Um, and so that has been a driving kind of force for how we have built the model. What I will say is that over time, nonprofits have, as we've reached out to them to get their payment information, right, and let them know that we're sending them money, then the questions come, well, how do I sign up on Grapevine? How can I thank the donors? How can I get more involved? And so we really, though, wanted it to be a pull from the nonprofits with clear direction from them, what they wanted, how they wanted to engage. And so only more recently, actually last year, did we start launching features that invited nonprofits to contribute. And so the first one we launched was a thank you note, where they can write a thank you note or film one or add some images and send that to the giving circle. And that's a great way for them also to share more about their work, invite everyone to an upcoming event, whatever it is. And so we're looking at expanding upon that so they can share updates and they can get even more involved if they'd like. But we're being really careful about that because I really don't want this to turn into something where, it's another thing that they have to proactively do to get the gold star, to get the money. And that's really not the goal of it. So anyway, so that's how that's the approach that we've taken. We've had incredible feedback from nonprofits. One other note about this model is that it often surfaces these smaller, more local organizations with smaller budgets, often are more diverse, and are typically underfunded. And so in this movement, for you to give a $10,000 check to a nonprofit like this, there's one that comes to mind right now. This woman, the executive director of an organization supporting women who have experienced domestic violence and helping them get back on their feet. She talked to us about how she got a $10,000 check and it was kind of a surprise. She wasn't having to work for it. It wasn't something, it was it was a gift in a way. And as she said, it was completely life-changing. And that amount just enabled her to get the little bit of breathing room that she needed, right? To spend the time to get the next money, to invest in the next thing. And for a lot of these small nonprofits or newer ones that are less than 3 years, they're not eligible for foundation grants. They're not large enough to get support. They might not even have much of a presence on some of the nonprofit ranking platforms because they're just so small and scrappy. They don't have time to put in all the details. And so through a community-based model like this, organizations are surfaced through community, and there is that community support and social proof that comes along with it that kind of can help them navigate around those other challenges to secure funding and in these kind of more critical stages. So the feedback has been wonderful, and I think if anything, there's now more and more pull for us to engage them more directly, and so we have been building out more resources and tools to do that.
I love that. And the community-based model is so inspiring. It's obviously, I think, a real challenge because you've got to constantly keep people inspired, as you say, and keep them engaged and offer them fun and opportunities and reasons to keep coming back, right? And so I want to step back and think about leadership for a second. I want to think about the values you talked about, and I want to learn from you about how you bring your values to your work to bring that inspiration to people, to remind us about why we're working on what we're doing, why it matters, why it's important. Can you just talk a little bit about that and how you show up to make that happen?
Yeah, you mean within the Grapevine organization, within the broader Grapevine community?
Yeah, I
All
mean,
of
I
you?
mean, I mean, if there's more to share beyond that too, I mean, you're absolutely welcome to. But yeah, I mean, certainly at Grapevine, but but as a leader as well, I think how you show up anywhere. I mean, how do you bring those values to light?
Mm. It's it's hard. I would say All of this work that we do in the social impact space is inspiring and meaningful and also hard. And so there's a lot of talk right now, and for a while, not right now alone, but around burnout in our sector, right? Because we're always trying to do more with less. And we struggle with that too. And we struggle with that both because we're a social impact organization and because we're a startup organization, a small startup right there. Um, and so um, I think it's a challenge, but it's also I'm trying to think of ways that I've been able to successfully do it. Because I guess where we've been the most successful is taking the same principles that we have with the work itself, which is when in doubt, ask the community. Go to the community. What events do you want? Where are you struggling? How can we help? We do the same thing with our team. We ask people, and we do this formally and informally, and we ask people to share, when they're struggling or what they'd like to learn more about and be more connected to. And it has come up through that people want to be more connected to the work, right? So we started doing more spotlights of Giving Circle members and started inviting people in to come and talk to the team, because not everyone on the team is directly engaged with our community members and getting exposure to that. Or getting to go to conferences like I'm fortunate to go to at times and be able to speak about our work in a community that can really appreciate that, even like this podcast, where you can appreciate the unique angle that we're bringing in, the role that we're filling in the sector, and how important that is. And so we try and find ways to bring that to all of our team members in a variety of ways. Like I said, whether it's inviting speakers in or just doing spotlights, inviting people to come and participate or observe different events that we're doing for the community, things like that, and then having them tell us as well what they're looking for. Um, but I do also just feel like with anything, a lot of it comes back to just reminding people how critical their role is too, and recognizing and thanking them for that role. And for the individual role that they're playing, and making sure we celebrate the new feature that was just launched, or this amazing customer support feedback email we just got, and amplifying that on our Slack for the whole team, so that everyone really feels like every role is important and is key to the overarching thing. So a lot of the details, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess kind of going off of that, Emily, I would love to hear what's been most rewarding for you about this journey of starting and leading Grapevine and being so successful and making such an impact at bringing people together to give collectively to then impact their own communities and own areas of interest. What comes up for you when you think about like what's been the most rewarding or fulfilling?
Hmm. Well, it's such a nice question to reflect on. I would say two things. I think two things have been particularly rewarding for me. I mean, one is definitely just the conversations that I have with the Giving Circle leaders and members and people who are just so excited about their experience and about their specific experience there in their Giving Circle, in their community. And it's just so rewarding to hear that and to know that something that I don't even know that I would say we created it. Certainly we didn't create Giving Circles or this movement, but something that we've helped to amplify and propel and make easier for people to find and engage with has been so rewarding for so many people. Um, and of course, I mean, that's the members, but it's also the nonprofits receiving these funds and the impact that they've been able to have. We actually have a Giving Circle member who started a podcast just to tell the stories of the nonprofits that receive funding from the Giving Circles. And it's just so wonderful because so much of our work is directly with the leaders to try and get, and the members and the unlocking funds, but to hear the impact of it for those nonprofits is so rewarding. So it really is that impact, those individual stories of impact. But I think the other thing for me is that I, when I was starting Grapevine, I really wanted it to be something unique. I wanted us to be differentiated. I wanted the thing that we created to be meaningful and needed. Um, I also like, I didn't want to start, well, I explored with starting a crowdfunding platform, and I just thought, there are a lot of crowdfunding platforms out there, and I don't know how we would be unique in this space. I don't know that the world really needs our crowdfunding platform. And I think people have found ways to be nuanced and provide value in that space. But that was the kind of thinking I was doing at the time. Like, what's the unique thing that we could do and that I care about and can maybe uniquely with the team that I've assembled and that we could bring to the world. So it's really wonderful to feel like we've been able to do that, and we do fill a niche and kind of are uniquely supporting this movement. Uh, so yeah, I would say that's also just from a strategic, like what we set out to do and accomplish. It's been rewarding to know that, to feel that we've been able to do that.
Very well done. I applaud your efforts to date, and I know how hard it is to, figure out, how do you sort of keep on top of the all of the changes and trends, and it feels like, we're in a day where technology is certainly outpacing my ability to keep up with it. And I feel like that is just going to get worse and worse as time goes on. And so I'm wondering, thinking about the future and seeing where the community is at, where do you see philanthropy going overall, and how do you think communities are going to want to continue to connect as we become more globalized, there's more technology than ever, issues and problems seem to be getting worse than better. How do we how will can we, how can Grapevine really stay ahead of that as things are changing?
Oh, I want to ask you that same question, Trevor. It is, I think about this a lot, and certainly with the AI wave and all these things changing so quickly. Um, I do think that community is more important than ever, and that people connecting is important, and the barriers to people connecting are greater than ever as well. So I don't know what the solutions are, honestly, but I do think those things are true and are just going to continue. And so the more we can find ways to connect people meaningfully and help them get around those barriers, whether it's geographic distance, whether it's um, just time, limited resources. There are just so many things that come up. That is the biggest challenge we have with our giving circles, is there's a lot of goodwill. People are really excited. Then when it comes down to it, the actual continuation, the connecting, the doing part, it's hard. Um, and so I think more ways we can make that easy and give people access to um, that connection with others, because once they have that, there's a spark that happens. You hear about that aha moment, and that's what we see with these giving circles, is that when people connect and they have that connection to the group and they have that connection to the impact they hear from that nonprofit, there's an aha moment that really gels, and then you've kind of got them. So how do you get people to that moment faster? Um, so anyway, I do think that's kind of where we're going, especially with so much technology and I think some fear around it, right? And where AI is going, and am I talking to a real person or not? I think it's just going to put even more of a premium on real life experiences, but even online, but with real people experiences. So I don't know if that's a real answer, Trevor, but those are a couple of things I've been mulling lately anyway.
That's really insightful, Emily. I feel like, only time will tell. And I appreciate you, sharing about the unknowns. I think so many of us are like, we can speak from our perspectives or the spaces we're in, but it's really hard to say. And I think what you're doing, just continuing to show up for your team, for your giving circles, for the communities you're supporting, that's the most important thing. I think we've learned today, I mean, I already knew this already, how big of a job you have and how busy you are and how much you're doing. So with that, I'm curious to hear what self-care looks like for you. We like to talk to our guests who are all leaders in their own respective areas about, taking those breaks. I know you mentioned you're a professional ballet dancer in the past. I don't know if it's ballet or the arts or something else that you do to kind of fill any free time you have, but I'm curious what that looks like for you And also from your perspective as a leader, what is the importance or value of self-care? We have a lot of folks listening that might be kind of starting their founder journey. And so just curious from your perspective what that's looked like.
So yes, I would say I'm fortunate in that I have ballet and really the performing arts that I'm very passionate about and I enjoy. And so I do struggle with taking time. And so one of the things that I have figured out for myself is that, and I've heard this from a lot of other people, so it's been helpful for me as well, is scheduling time. And it's really easy to cancel on yourself when you schedule that time to read, or you schedule that time to journal, or you schedule that time for these things. But I encourage you to do it because I do all of those things and I find it really extremely valuable. But also sometimes I need to schedule something that's harder to cancel. So taking
Mm.
myself to see something, at the ballet, or I do go to ballet class still occasionally. I do also do yoga. I should do more fitness related things, but trying to schedule things where I'm committed to going, and where I can, I have a friend or someone else to go with me, because it can be hard to keep those promises to yourself always, at least when you're first kind of building up to it. So yeah, I would say I think it's very important to take time away and to find those things that are inspiring and rejuvenating for you. And for me, beyond the arts, another big one is just being outside. Being in the outdoors is not only just wonderfully fulfilling, but also often creates some fitness opportunity, right? Whether you're hiking or you're biking or something like that, and also takes you away from your devices, which I think is also really important. So those are some of the things I
Yeah.
think about when I'm trying to, when I think about self-care, keeping myself healthy.
Thank you. Yeah, that's so wise and such a great reminder for everyone listening today, myself included, to, as they say, put on your oxygen mask before others. We need to take care of ourselves in order to show up for and support the others, in the impact space that we're supporting and serving. So such a great reminder. I love the idea of setting things on the calendar, like paying that money to go to that show. It's harder to cancel.
Yeah.
Or blocking your calendar if you have the opportunity for a quick workout so that meetings can't be scheduled at that time. And I think it really does wonders if you just take that little bit of time for yourself as a founder. It can just give you so much more clarity and space and peace of mind. The outdoors too. I love that. I'm always trying to get outside when I can. So thank you. That is really great advice for all those listening.
And just as we are getting ready to wrap up today, I would just have one last question for you. And it's one that we like to ask all of our guests, which is about legacy and
Mm.
where your legacy will be because of Grapevine and where that will be as a company in the future. And then also for yourself, leaving the impact that you want to leave behind. And when people think about you, what you want them to remember.
Such big questions. Um, I think legacy for me with Grapevine, yes, the numbers are important to me. How much money have we moved into communities? Have we helped to move into communities? I mean, certainly it's the communities themselves that are doing it, but we're coming up on $50 million, and that's a really exciting milestone. So I think the legacy of being able to, as someone who doesn't expect to ever make enough money to one day donate $50 million, to be able to help facilitate that is really rewarding. And I think a part of the legacy. Another part is that we've moved that money to 6,500 nonprofits across the country, many of which are small and local and underfunded, where it really can go further. So it's about the money, but it's also about where it's going. And it's about how it's getting there, right? And like these communities that it's activating and engaging along the way. So I hope the legacy for Grapevine is the impact that we're having across all of those areas. Um, and that we've really stepped in to fill a unique void in this space at this time. I think COVID was a unique moment where we were able to step in and fill a gap there. But I do think that work has continued, and I do hope that that will continue. And even now, we're I think uniquely placed in this sector where we are supporting corporate foundations and DAF sponsors and nonprofits and building their own communities of collaborative giving groups, right? Whether it's donors supporting a nonprofit, employees supporting communities around the world. And so bringing this model, this approach, making it easy and turnkey for all of these different applications, I think is I want that to be our legacy, that we've been able to help unlock this model that is so rewarding and impactful for such a broad community of users. There was a second part to that question, Trevor. Was it my own personal legacy? Was that it?
Yeah. If you don't mind sharing, thinking about the legacy that you want to leave behind, in the dent that you want to make in the universe, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's so intertwined with the company legacy at this point. I think I've always wanted to start something. I always wanted to create something new. So to me, that's really important that we've been able to do that. And I've always wanted it to be an ongoing thing, right? Whatever the future looks like, I feel that we have built something that will continue and continue to add value in a variety of ways. And so uh, that to me is really important. And I think beyond that, and my legacy of just my family and sort of that side of things. I would say I've always been pretty focused on my career and my social impact work, and that really being a core part, defining part of me. But I think as I've gotten a bit older and, my niece and nephew are growing up and things like that, part of my personal legacy is certainly wrapped up in how I show up for my family. And um, I think that'll be a growing part of it as well.
I love that. Very beautifully said, Emily. And we just want to thank you so much for joining us today. This has been such an inspiring conversation. Even though I've known you, I just learned so much more about you and Grapevine every time we have the opportunity to chat. I know that you've inspired our listeners and informed our listeners, for those who aren't familiar with giving circles or Grapevine yet. And that being said, I'm curious if you can share with our audience the best places to find you, to find Grapevine, how to connect, how to get involved, all that.
Of course, thank you for the question and again for the opportunity. It's been wonderful to be in conversation with both of you today. If you're interested in learning more about Grapevine and Giving Circles, you can find us at grapevine.org, O-R-G, and there you'll find all sorts of resources for anyone who's looking to start a giving circle. You'll find the Global Giving Circle directory if you're looking to find one that you might want to join as a member. And if you're a nonprofit wanting to get more involved or a company wanting to bring this into the workplace, you'll find information about that there as well. So grapevine.org. Otherwise, you'll find us on most of the socials at Grapevine Giving. So at Grapevine Giving, and we'll be there with lots of updates and stories and impact reports, etc.
Fantastic. Thank you so much again, Emily. This has been wonderful having you on.
$60 billion is being given by companies to nonprofits in 2024 to maximize regulatory benefits and manage reputation for employees and customers. Some companies are struggling. The rest are using OrgMatch because OrgMatch optimizes this process, saving time and money required in due diligence, research, and administration, while increasing confidence in the impact and investment earned. That's why community investment teams around the world are trusting OrgMatch to get the job done. Find out for yourself by going to orgmatch.com. That's ORGMATCH.com to get started now for free. Welcome back. All right, so it's time for what's on your mind, and it's been a while, as we said, since we've connected, Erin. I know there's been a lot that's been going on for both of us, but did you want to share, what have you been, thinking about lately, and what's on your mind today?
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. It has been a while. I feel like it is a bit of a an interesting time, especially in the impact space. There's a lot of volatility, there's a lot of change, there's a lot of upheaval. And I think, there's really just a lot of uncertainty for folks, especially those who have unfortunately lost jobs or furloughed, or maybe looking for a job, but their search has been upended or paused or redirected because of all that's going on. I think, especially because I do social impact career coaching, I've been thinking a lot about this, but also just being in this space, everyone is affected, whether you still have your job or not, or you're anywhere in between. I think we're all feeling the changes, in terms of what the future of impact is going to look like and where impact sits at companies, the role of, companies in, I'm going to pause there. Sorry. I just have to rethink what I was trying to say. The role of companies in the impact space in general, how nonprofits are being supported. There's just so much, right? We could go on and on about kind of the questions that are arising right now. But what I really want to touch on is how we show up for others when they are in a time of transition in the impact space. It is extremely difficult when the core of your work is in question, and then let's say you lose a job or don't get to move forward because a job is no longer being hired, or there's some sort of change for you. That's doubly hard, right? And so there's just so many folks right now, unfortunately, I'm seeing posts on LinkedIn that they've been laid off, they've been furloughed, they're still looking for that impact job that they've been looking for forever. And now they're not even sure how it's going to come to fruition. There are folks that are just scared, myself included, of where we are headed. And so I think, in the spirit of community, which is, what we're all about, and especially what we're focusing on this year, I'd love to share some ideas for how we can show up for our community and be there to support one another when things are unknown. I think, and there's been so much positivity on LinkedIn as well. I've seen so many folks offering, whether it's a, 30-minute chat, or check out this resource, or go to this event, or talk to this person, or join this, community call where you can just share what's on your mind and talk to like-minded folks who are in a similar situation. There's a lot out there. And I think all of that is great. And we just need to keep doing it and keep doing more. I think a lot of times when disaster strikes, for those listening, I'm putting that in air quotes, but this is a disaster, if you will. People show up right away, and then things maybe settle a bit, the dust settles a bit, and then there's no one there anymore. I think a lot about that actually in the nonprofit space with fundraising campaigns. Something happens, everybody's giving, and then the dust settles, and then no one's giving anymore, and the people affected are still affected, and things are not necessarily better. Maybe they've just calmed down. So I think this is a reminder to folks in the impact space to check in on your colleagues and friends, see how they're doing, to anything you can do to help someone, whether it is an introduction, whether it's sharing a job posting they may have missed, whether it's like, hey, I'd be happy to look over your resume, or do a mock interview with you, or talk about different ways of going about your search. Maybe a job in the impact space might not happen for you personally right now, but you need that job. So maybe it's, talking, being a sounding board for different types of jobs out there that are tangentially related, that could utilize your skill set. Maybe it's for folks determining the impact space is where they're going to be right now, but they need to kind of reconfigure the types of roles, rethink the types of roles they were originally thinking about. So being there as a sounding board, as a thought partner, helping people to find ways to make an impact outside of their work. A lot of times when there aren't impact jobs, or folks are transitioning, making a big transition, they have to take on those stepping stone roles. Maybe they don't get to feel that they're making the sort of impact they want to make day in and day out. So looking outside of work, as a volunteer opportunity Is there, a project you can work on? Is there an employee resource group you can join that's impact focused? So just, with all of that, what I'm trying to say is just, being there to support your network. What goes around comes around. We've all been there. We'll all be there. And really any insights you can give to folks if you do know about jobs, if you do know about people offering, opportunities to connect, resources for folks that have been furloughed or laid off, um, groups of like-minded people that might just want to talk about what they're going through. I think that's really important. The impact community is so powerful and filled with so many amazing humans. And this is the time, I feel like now more than ever, to show up for others and be that thought partner, that cheerleader that we would all want if we were in that situation. So yeah, I just been thinking about that a lot, but it has given me so much hope to see people coming out of the woodworks for their colleagues and friends and strangers to show up for them in their time of need.
It's such a challenging time. I know the layoffs feel, we use the word unprecedented comes up a lot, but like we are really in an interesting time right now because we're seeing both, I think, changes in terms of public and private sector moving away from social impact in terms of jobs right now. And whether that is companies, laying people off because of political pressure, or whether it is the closure of agencies like the USAID. We have tens of thousands of people in the last months who are out of work, who have been at the forefront of solving the greatest challenges of our time. And that is within the United States, that is within Canada, that is around the world, where people depend on this work. And I know that we're in a really interesting time. I don't want to get too into the politics because I think it's important that, especially as we talk about community, that people from all over the political spectrum feel like they can participate and show up to do the work that's required. And we don't need to, check people's IDs to show up and do that good work. We should be, in community together. But there's a lot of polarization right now, nonetheless, and people pointing the finger and saying, really quick to point the finger and identify the problem. But the hard part is actually keeping the work going, making sure that mouths are fed, making sure that there's opportunities for people who don't have anything to be able to have upward social mobility in the world. And I think that, your country, the United States, has been at its best a moral leader for the world in times of crisis and need. I think about opportunities when, following the Second World War, the amount of money and infrastructure the U.S. built, in Europe and around the world to say that we're going to have a world order that respects rule of law and democracy, and why the USAID was created in the first place, which I would call the greatest marketing agency for the United States in the world, where
Mhm.
people who truly have nothing are getting food with the logo of the United States emblem on it. I think that
Mhm.
is when it's at its best. And as a Canadian, I have been proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with the United States when it shows up in that way. And I think that it's a great reminder of what we need to get back to. And I think what's missing in the world today is needing that inspiration again to say that we are in community, that there are paths forward, and that no matter where we are in the world, we can show up at home and abroad for each other when in times of need and crisis. The problems that we need to solve are not going away. They're getting worse. And these jobs that have gone away today, I think are going to come back tomorrow, to your point. Let's support the people who have been affected, because we're going to need them more than ever tomorrow when things are getting worse. And we're going to need them to show up and be at their best. So I agree with you 100%. Let's support them. Let's not lose faith. Let's remind ourselves of what these jobs were created for in the first place. Let's remind ourselves of the world we once stood shoulder to shoulder together to create, and the vision we had for what a rules-based democratic world order looked like, where we supported each other, where we believed that those without should be given by those who have more. And
Mm.
we can get back to those times.
That was so beautifully said. Have you ever thought of working in politics, Trevor? I would totally vote for you, by the way. I just, everything you say, I'm just so inspired. And but I mean, truthfully, like I do really appreciate what you said and your support and how you are thinking of folks that have been affected by all that's going on. And I really do feel like we have the best and the brightest folks in the impact space, the most amazing people with the kindest hearts that are giving their all to change the world. And I know that together we can support them, and that we will move through this and past this hopefully, and see brighter times ahead. But yeah, definitely appreciate your words, and I know you're doing so much for folks in your network, as you always do, so thank you for that. Yeah, so Trevor, on that note, I'd love to hear what's been on your mind. I know that was heavy. I know you've had some travels recently. I'd love to hear about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I mean, part of the reason I'm thinking so globally is I did just get back from Zimbabwe and Ethiopia and Madagascar, where I saw a different part of the world and I saw the amount of privilege that I have here. I don't have to go and collect my water from a public fountain every day or pay for it. I don't have to experience rolling blackouts like, I did when I was traveling on mission. And so I feel really grateful to be back home here in Canada, where the things that I take for granted every day are all of a sudden much more fascinating to me and much more interesting, and I feel really good about that. And I think just to the point, that we were just talking about, there's a lot going on in the world today. I'm really inspired by the communities that I saw and had a chance to work with in the nations that I visited. Um, there was a group of 17 civil society organizations in Madagascar that I met with on my travels there, and they were just fascinated by by the West and like what's it like to have a free press? What's it like to actually
Mm.
have an election where you're allowed to vote the way that you want to? And these are real questions. And I thought like, wow, like I've never thought about that really before. I've never had to experience the other side of that. And somebody asked me, how do you organize when your life is being threatened? How do you organize with other people when you don't know whether the army is going to show up and take you away? And like it was really, really hard hitting, and it reminded me that like we have a lot that we want to like work for and fight for, and there's a lot in the world that definitely needs that leadership we talked about for people to be able to do this work. And so yeah, I feel definitely like my eyes are more open to what's happening and the need for us to show up for those who are fighting for their freedoms everywhere in the world right now, and who are experiencing extreme poverty, corruption, environmental crisis. There's just so many things that could be going on. And so yeah, I've been thinking a lot about just the need for the jobs to be coming back, for what that future looks like, and how we can refocus on showing up for each other no matter where we are.
Mm. It sounds like an incredibly impactful trip, and I'm sure really meaningful and really eye-opening to see life in a different place and to see the struggles and challenges that folks are facing, outside of where you live or outside of where I live. It gives great perspective. I think for me, whenever I've done travel to different parts of the world, or even just seen communities of people locally that don't necessarily have what I have or haven't had the privilege or opportunity, it just gives you that perspective. And it reminds me what you were saying, of why the work we're doing is so important and so vital. But also that perspective on talking to folks who haven't had the opportunity to vote, as we have, haven't been in this sort of government or democracy. And so I'm sure that was, yeah, definitely really eye opening and made you kind of pause and think about how we approach the challenges that we have and how we do our best work and show up for our friends and neighbors around the world. Again, kind of back to that community theme. So that sounded really impactful. I'm sure it was a very busy trip. I'm sure you got a lot accomplished. I'm definitely excited to hear more about what you're doing. And I'm sure the fact that you are with two different organizations, with Transparency International and Org Match, I'm sure you can bring so many learnings back to Org Match as well in terms of thinking about the communities that ultimately you all are supporting and serving through your work. So I'm sure it was beneficial in so many different ways.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, people were asking me like, yeah, how do you find, how do you find donors? How do you connect with them? And what does that look like? And there's a real opportunity for, technology to play a greater role, no matter where we are. I mean, it can really help to connect us more and more. So definitely a lot of learnings, definitely a really beautiful trip. And yeah, I really appreciate all of that, Erin. Really great to be back home, like I said. So thanks for today's episode. Thank you for inviting Emily on. It was a great conversation. And thanks everybody for listening. You can expect new episodes of Social Situation to come out on the second Thursday of every month. Social Situation is co-hosted by Erin Mogul and myself, Trevor Loke. We are sponsored by OrgMatch and Elevate Social Impact, edited by Tristan Thompson. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, and see you next time.